all he does is whine and moan from a position of privilege, and he's dumb as a, I was going to say the F word, fence post.
George, I signed the petition. I did it. I'm one of those kids.
You have to suck up to him and kiss the ring.
I hate the guy. He's a creep. He needs to get out of here.
This is Canadian Pulse, the podcast, brought to you by the American Pulse and Canadian Pulse Substacks, with your hosts, George Froelich and Tamara Stanners.
I'm George Froelich, and this is Tamara Stanners.
You got it. And we have so much to talk about. We've got some big announcements from Ottawa that Prime Minister Carney has given us about a huge mega Churchill Falls project, which is going to energize a lot of Canada and possibly the U.S., and massive defense project spending that's going to protect our Arctic from, everybody, hopefully. And there's a move to oust the ambassador of the United States of America to Canada, and it's gaining a lot of strength. And I know George has some very strong feelings about that. And Mr. Wonderful may be being shut down, which couldn't happen to a nicer guy. But first, we're going to get to the very major breaking news and a story that kept George up very late last night. You just got a letter from the Prime Minister's office?
No. I got an email saying... wishful thinking.
I know.
I get a text message from the Prime Minister's office, which they send to all media, basically, saying that today he's going to host a meeting with this cabinet and a virtual meeting with all the Canadian first ministers. So I think there's no doubt about what they're going to talk about. They're obviously going to talk about the deal in Washington, and he's going to brief them on it, and away we go.
Well, I think it's interesting that you call it a deal, because I know you were up late last night. I know that you were following it very closely. I know that after Donald Trump on his Truth Social said that we had a deal, you watched and saw crickets happening as there was no announcement from Canada, which made you think, this is kind of fishy. Then hours later, Prime Minister Carney's office did release a press release, and it didn't exactly say we had a deal.
No, what it basically said is we're working towards one. There's still work to be done. And we know what Trump is like. He likes to position himself as the one who made the deal happen. And that's exactly what he did. He was outside outside the White House today for a helicopter pad that they're installing, and he was briefing the press on it, and he referred to it, like I did this and I did that. He likes to be seen as the one who makes the deals, when in fact, that's not true. It was the people behind the scenes like James Greer, the representative for himself, and Lalonde, and our ambassador, and Charette, the trade negotiator.
Really
They're
good
the ones
trade
who made it
negotiators.
happen.
Yeah, really good ones. I didn't know until I read your article that Howard Lutnick was so involved in these trade talks. And it terrifies me that he is, because, Donald Trump is an evil man, and so is Howard Lutnick. Like, they are only out for themselves at all times. And that was kind of scary to see. I had no idea.
Well, the interesting thing, it's typical Trump. What he does is he'll put somebody in charge, leave them there, and then all of a sudden yank them out, and then just to teach them a lesson and then bring them back. It's just to let people know who's in charge. And he did that with Lutnick. In the first rounds with the negotiations, it was Lutnick and his people who led it. And then later on, James Greer became the key person to negotiate the deal. And then yesterday, all of a sudden, when they were close to a deal, or whatever you want to call it, or some agreement, he brought Lutnick in. And Lutnick is the one who, has got the ears of the president. And I think that's Trump's way of making sure that nobody screws him over, because he's always afraid that somebody's going to pull a fast one on him.
Well, because he's
Guess
always
why?
pulling the fast ones on everybody else. Like, he thinks everybody is as bad as him. And
Yeah.
sadly, people do have to sort of adopt his bad politics in order to get anything done, which is truly unfortunate.
You have to suck up to him and kiss the ring.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Otherwise, you're gone.
That's funny you should say that, like, kiss the ring. In the House of Commons, Mark Carney was criticized for not going to Washington to have face-to-face conversations with Trump about these negotiations. And he's like, I text with him directly frequently. because Donald Trump is a modern man, which I thought was quite interesting. I didn't realize they had that kind of a relationship, like texting back and forth. And as all of us are, like with texting, that is kind of like an intimate relationship to have, like not really, but in a technological terms. That's a very tight relationship to have with somebody.
Well, yeah, because you don't text with everybody,
No.
right?
Yeah.
You only text with close friends or with a company that you want to do business with or something. No, I agree. The fact that he's got that kind of a relationship where he can text and presumably Trump responds is a very good sign. But, the key about Trump is don't let that fool you. He'll
Right.
drop you at the something that he doesn't like and you're gone in a minute. He's got no loyalties whatsoever to anyone other than to himself.
We've got a 3-day extension now for our trade talks with the USA. So essentially just a reprieve, but we don't really have a deal. But there's somebody in Canada who thinks that he can really, really help Prime Minister Mark Carney. Is this true?
Well, I gotta laugh. The name is Pierre Poilievre. Just imagine he wants to help the prime minister now because he thinks the deal is imminent and he can parlay that into something for his political misfortunes because he's down in the dumps. He was in the Maritimes today advocating that he and personally and the whole party is willing to help Mark Carney with these negotiations and plans
Wait.
with, pardon me?
How? That's such a flip-flop. It's a
I
huge
know
flip-flop.
all week prior to this, he's been castigating Carney, how terrible he is and how he gives up and he doesn't know how to negotiate and all of that. And now that he thinks the roses are coming up, he wants to smell them and give the prime minister a little bouquet and say, here, prime minister, here's my roses to you. Let me help you out with whatever possible. The man is disgusting. And you know
Wow.
what's equally disgusting is how people still fall for that nonsense. And again, I come back to Facebook. The people that think this guy is God's gift to humanity and politics is unbelievable. To him, he can do no wrong. It's like the mega cult in the United States.
Right. And again, I think that there are a couple of things that I just want to mention. One being that he is so well backed by the disinformation kings, like whether it's, Canada Proud, whether it's
Rebel News.
Rebel News, like they being the forces that they are in Canadian media, which is astoundingly frightening, support him and they will to the end. And so that's where so many people are getting their news from. They don't know the truth anymore. And this is something
But
that we'll continually talk about.
But you know what, Tamara? CTV did a survey of various members of parliament of his caucus, and it was amazing how many off the record, because they're afraid there's going to be retribution if they went public
I
with
saw
their
that.
names, how many people can't stand him in his own caucus. He's indecisive. He's all over the place. They don't think he's a leader, and they're really concerned about the fortunes in an upcoming election with him at the helm.
Yeah.
And they
I saw
have
that.
every reason to be. But what I found interesting, this is the first time that you have seen this kind of reporting that where people internally are fed up with him and they know he doesn't have it. And why do you think so many conservatives have crossed the floor? You know,
Right.
but another thing is coming up, all these by-elections, that'll put it to a test once and for all. If the Liberals win most of them, and I suspect they will, then I don't see how he can stay on as party leader. I think
I
there'll be a
don't.
revolt.
I can't believe that he's still there. But one of my favorite things is the way that you say his name. Do it again. Say his name.
Pierre Poilievre.
Isn't it Polyev?
Oh, yes,
But
you're right.
But you know what? I don't think you should ever say it correctly. You keep saying his name wrong because like he is the wrong man for the job. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, you know what I like is I call him PP.
Perfect.
And one other thing which you get a kick of, wife Linda doesn't like him either. And every chance she gets, she repeats on social media to the point where one person said, can't you say anything else about him? She'll always say, it took him 11 years to get a BA. That's her favorite line on social media when Pierre comes up. And then, as I said, one person said, can't you find something else to say about him?
Well, you can say that he's never actually had a job except for that one time that I think he was an insurance salesman or something like that. Like
What?
he's never had a job, right? Aside
No,
from
it's
being
always been taxpayers,
politics.
taxpayer funded salary, taxpayer funded mansion, better than the prime minister's place. And he still whines and moans and groans and, he's going to do this. And if you listen to him, he doesn't have any original ideas. It's always complaining and hitting the liberals what they're doing wrong. If he came up with an original idea every once in a while, if I become prime minister, this is what I would do, people might listen to him. But all he does is whine and moan from a position of privilege, and he's dumb as I was going to say the F word, fence post.
But he's really fun to watch work out because he likes to share his workout videos. Okay, that's enough. Enough of Pierre. What's his last name? Say it.
Poilievre.
Yes. Right. And I think it's really interesting, too, that we have been warned as Canadians to get ready to be seeing more American products on the shelves, like, for example, in liquor stores. Like, that is something that could happen very soon, where American product will be back on the shelves here, where we have been in most provinces boycotting American alcohol products since the beginning of the tariff war. And I find that really interesting. And I wonder if Canadians are ready to just open arms again, like say, yeah, sure, no problem. We're here to support you all, Americans, even though the 51st state rhetoric is still being tossed about. And, the tariff warning has only got a 3-day reprieve. So I really wonder how Canadians are going to feel about all of this.
Well, it's interesting. There's a distinct dichotomy between the way Canadians feel about Americans and the way Americans feel about Canadians. Canadians are really getting sick and tired of Americans. They blame them for a lot of the things that are happening via Trump, and the love is gone, whereas the reverse doesn't hold true. The Americans are still very, very fond of Canadians. And I think what that means is the Americans can see what Trump is doing to Canada, and they don't blame Canadians for being upset, which, I mean, when you think about it, is a very magnanimous gesture on the part of the American public.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still loved by the American public at large, whereas we're not returning the love as much to the Americans. The Canadians aren't.
Right. I do think, though, that we're still able to make a distinction between the American people and the American government, and just understanding that there was obviously a large percentage of the American people who voted for them. I do feel terribly for the other part of America that didn't. And then it's interesting because, like, I've had a lot of company over the last while, and one of the subjects came up, even an American came here who is very much opposed to Donald Trump. But one of the things that came up was that they're equally angry with the Democrats in the United States of America for not being stronger, for splintering.
Yeah. You know what's interesting within the Democratic Party? Uh, New York is a good example. In Michigan, Muslims are getting elected.
Right.
And there's a real split in the party on they don't know what the hell to do.
Huh.
Because on the one hand, the old guard, the Schumers and others, they've never endorsed any of these people. So that tells you something, that they're not too keen on Muslims being elected. And the more not advantageous, the more open-minded Democrats don't mind. It's the old guard that has a problem with it. But the harsh reality is the demographics for the United States of America show, I can't remember what the date is, but the days of the white folks running things are over.
Mm-hmm.
The demographics are changing in favor of these so-called minorities, the Muslims, all the East Indians, everybody. They're the ones who are going to run America. And I think the Democrats, the old guard, is worried about that. That's why they're not endorsing any of these candidates. And yet, you read all the time. I read another article about another sort of very progressive Democrat ran, and she surprised everybody, and she had no budget or anything to run, and she won by big margin. And I think that you're seeing that more and more in the United States political scene.
It is absolutely wild. And so, again, we started the whole conversation about, about that sort of rift within the Democratic Party by just the fact that Canadians have lost faith in Americans, which is truly unfortunate. And hopefully we can rebuild that. But I wonder how hard it is going to be to rebuild, specifically when we still don't have a trade deal. Anything could happen with it. It could go completely downhill, but it's just going to hurt both sides if it does.
Well, the point being is the essence is you can't trust Donald Trump. I mean, he signed the Kuzma agreement, tore it up, right?
Yep.
He backstabbed, as we talked about before, Saudi Arabia. One day they got a deal, the next day he pulled it. So, I mean, my attitude on it is this: he will talk up this deal as he's doing. Oh, it's great. It's going to be great for the farmers, especially the potash is desperately needed in the United States.
Totally.
Some of those farms are on the verge of bankruptcy because they don't have enough potash. And he's touting that. But he's done all of this kind of stuff before. With him, you never know. So unless the deal is signed, sealed, and delivered, I'm going to be very skeptical. And even then, Tamara, what's to prevent him from tearing it up?
Right.
I mean, that's the harsh reality. We're living in an age of uncertainty because the madman doesn't know what he's going to do from one minute to the next. That's essentially what it comes down to. It's harsh, but it's true.
But it is our reality. And what I feel very fortunate about right now, regardless of whether or not I believe in everything that he does, is that we do have somebody who is so calm, cool, and collected as our leader, who announced that massive hydroelectric plant that is going to be built, Churchill Falls. It's enough to power Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, all of it. I mean, it's a really big deal. And he was doing that kind of to outline the fact, and I read this actually in both Canadian and American Pulse, to outline the fact that Canada has so much that the United States actually needs, this being one of them, as their power supplies aren't capable of powering their country. Here we have something that's going to be built that is not just great for Canada, but ultimately good for the United States too. And he did it just on the eve of the deadline. It was very smart timing.
Well, you know what was interesting about that? Just a little anecdote, right? I watched that press conference, and a reporter said to him, "Are you going to be talking to Donald Trump?" And he says, "Of course I am." And he said, "The first thing I'll bring up is this deal they just made." And he said, "I'm not joking. Truthfully, that's the case." And what he was saying to Donald Trump, here's some leverage that we have over you. It was a very subtle way of doing it, and just make you aware of it because you probably don't know about it. And then he said he was going to talk about the rest of the trade deal. But first, he was going to start off with this hydroelectric development and the impact it's going to have on the United States because they need that power.
Absolutely. And it's going to have an incredible impact in Canada too, with the jobs that it will create and all of the power that then we will have access to as well in regions that have, typically do have employment issues. And it actually ticks a lot of boxes. One of them it doesn't tick is the environment. And that is something that I actually care deeply about. But as we've discussed multiple times, he is doing things to protect our country, not necessarily our environment, and that will come later.
Now, I've got a question for you. I saw him the other day, this is Carney, talking about the environment. And he said, Canada is doing a great job and it takes it seriously and this and that. And I found that a bit disingenuous. Now, I don't know very much about the environment and Carney's role in it. All I know is they've cut back. But here he was trying to portray himself as being on top of things. And a poll had just come out indicating that Canada essentially was at the bottom of the barrel in terms of being a pro-environmentalist country. And here he is, talking about it, what a great job Canada is doing and when it comes to the environment. And I just wanted to get your perspective on it. What do you think?
Wow, George, funny you should ask that. And it's really interesting because I wasn't even going to bring this up on the podcast today, but I was doing a little comparison in the newly announced defense projects that are going to be put into place to protect our pristine North and Arctic. And I believe the number is $6.6 billion to be put into that sector, creating 125,000 jobs in defense. It's like a big deal to protect us from multiple people. I get it. The Russians, the Chinese, the Americans potentially. Who even knows? Like it is it's a very important piece of territory that should be protected. But the spend on the environment, because I also looked into that, is $34 million to protect the environment. Funded through a Green Municipal Fund, local leadership for climate adaptation initiative. So, for example, Halifax is getting $800,000 for a park cooling measure. Compare that to the $6.6 billion being spent on defense. And like it legit is a drop in the bucket for our environment.
Well, you and I have talked about that before, that his attitude is, I got to take care of business first. In other words, stimulate the economy away from the Americans. When that works, then we'll have the money to do
Right.
all the stuff on the environment, which I tend to agree with. And I know you're not really aboard with that. But, however, for him to get up on television and tout what a great job Canada is doing, I mean, that is utter pure nonsense. And I'm surprised that he would do that, because I thought he would rise a kind of partisan bullshit politics, and he just proved he isn't.
And you know what? It's right on the heels of one of the worst wildfire seasons that we've ever had as a nation. And he hasn't really talked too much about that at all. And like I know this morning, the people of Summerland were able to go back into their homes, or at least some of them, and over 150 structures were burnt throughout the region. And it's just like there's this. It just seems to be missing from the bigger picture. And I get it. We've got a bully to the south of us and super powerful people that we can't trust to the north of us. So defense is something that has to be looked into.
Well, you know what I think it is with the wildfires? He's letting sleeping dogs lie, because as soon as he's going to say something about it, then people are going to clamor, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because to deal effectively with these wildfires is going to mean spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, which we haven't really done. And those wildfires are not going to get any better. It's going to get worse and worse after year.
Absolutely.
So my sense of it is, I let sleeping dogs lie. I'm not going to talk about it, because if I do, I'll be put in a position that I can't defend. In other words, he's not all of a sudden going to say, if he says something about the wildfires, people will say, well, why aren't you spending some money on doing this and that? And he was not going to be able to say, yes, we are, because he has no intentions of doing that.
Very interesting. One of the reasons why wildfires have become such an issue is that it's dry. It's way drier than it ever used to be. And we've been suffering droughts as a nation right across the country. And I find it really exciting, excellent news, that Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, is actually stalled again in his Wonder Valley project, which is in Alberta, because of water lease issues. And they pushed off the start of development from 2026 to 2028 now, but I think that it may never happen, because he's coming up against some really big opposition from the Sturgeon Cree Nation. And they're like, this is our water. We're already going through droughts, and he has no way of guaranteeing that the water isn't going to be tainted and ruined. So that was one of my favorite stories this week. I love it. I love it when bad guys get stopped in their tracks.
Well, Kevin O'Leary is sort of a smaller version of Donald Trump. He ran for the leadership of the Conservative Party. He didn't make it. And he likes to bluster and to poke his way through stuff. And I think this is just another example. Oh, I'll announce it. The natives will be grateful. That's probably the attitude he's going to take. And you're absolutely right. Now he's getting the taste of his own medicine. That bluster isn't working anymore. And the natives are rightfully standing up to him. And you know what? He's going to have to cave. And he has become so Americanized.
Oh, totally.
He's a favorite on Fox News in the United States. They love him there, because he's, he badmouths Canada, our policies and everything. And he's sort of the darling, the Canadian darling in America, where he lives now, of the far right and the MAGA people.
It's so gross. And he was in that movie that Timothée Chalamet was in. He was at the Academy Awards because he portrayed he was Gwyneth Paltrow's husband. That is the character that he portrayed, which is like poor Gwyneth. Anyway, when he went to the Academy Awards, he was wearing like a trading card, like a sports trading card worth, I don't know, $1.5 million as a little necklace around his neck. Like that was his outfit, because anybody who has to flaunt their wealth in such a way must not be all that confident on the inside. You know what I mean? Like if that's how he
Yeah.
must it. It's just all this weird, I don't know, trying to build up something that he is lacking.
Well, because his company is private, so we really don't know how successful of a businessman he is, right?
Right.
He gives you the impression he's super successful because he knows how to bullshit, basically.
Right.
Comes down to that. But, I'm sure that he's got some good stuff in his portfolio. But how really good he is, we'll never know.
No, I know. And I hope that with with this postponement of both Wonder Valley in Alberta and all of the resistance that he is facing in Utah, because he's also trying to put another $100 billion data center into the Salt Lake City area, and people are like, absolutely not. And he lied so much about it too. Like he fully lied about the people who were opposing the project, saying that they were bought and paid for by China. And they were actually real live people from Salt Lake City who were like, no, dude. And actually pointing out that he was actually a foreigner as well. While he is accusing them of being foreign players, he was the actual foreigner bringing in a $100 billion data center that nobody wanted and that he was going to get rich from. Wild.
Well, follow the Trump playbook.
Yeah.
Make outrageous statement, denigrate people, lie your face off, and you can be assured you're going to get a spot, and be right wing, and you sure be assured you're going to get a spot on American television.
And get to go to Mar-a-Lago.
And that's what he's doing.
Yeah. So he went to Mar-a-Lago with Danielle Smith, right? The premier of Alberta.
Yes.
And speaking of Danielle Smith, one of her friends, Pete Hextra, who is the U.S. ambassador, she actually took him on I think it was an all expenses paid trip to see the oil sands last year.
Yes.
Yeah. And he is currently not very popular in Canada. And there are over 200,000 signatures on a petition to get him removed as ambassador to the United States, or to Canada from the United States. What do you think about that?
Yes, it was started by a woman. The petition was started by a woman in Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as, I'm glad to see Canadians are speaking up against him, and this is a very good manifestation of it. However, it's not going to go anywhere. What people have to understand, and you have to really distinguish between the two, Canadians, I would say, every time I write about him, the metrics of people who watch it and read what I write about him go through the roof. Okay. They hate him with a passion. They think he shouldn't be here. He should be expelled. Well, folks, I hate to give you a wake-up call, but the reality is he is doing what Donald Trump has put him into Canada for. He's an agent provocateur. He makes outrageous statements. He lies and all of that kind of stuff. That's his job as an ambassador. Now, look, we may not like it, but to think that Carney is going to ask the United States to recall him as an ambassador, you're daydreaming, folks. While I appreciate, your earnestness, your intensity about your feelings, and the petition is a good sign of, what Canadians think about him, because it ultimately reflects on Donald Trump. I applaud that, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's just you hate the guy. Let's let off some steam. Okay, I'll put my name to this petition, but that's
George,
the end of it.
George, I signed the petition. I did it. I'm one of those kids. I'm like, why not?
Are you?
I am. You know what? And for the very reason, like, it may not do anything, but I hate the guy. He's a creep. He needs to get out of here, and he won't get out of here until Trump is gone and somebody else. Like, he's an awful man. Awful.
Well, I'm glad you signed the petition.
Thank
because,
you,
in a democracy, you got to make your feelings known. You got to stand up for what you believe in. So in that extent, I think it's a wonderful concept, a great idea, but be realistic. It's not going anywhere.
I know. Okay, you know what else I noticed is like a tiny little story that I saw on Twitter. I'm never going to call it the other name because I don't like Elon Musk. I hate even being on it, but there's stuff on there that sometimes I just can't find anywhere else. So that's why I was on Twitter. And I saw a story from Vancouver about a condo in a building called the Butterfly. You know this building, George? The Butterfly?
No.
It's over by the old St. Paul's Hospital. Anyway, for those of you not in Vancouver, doesn't matter. It's like a very pricey, beautiful high-rise building. And this one particular condo was purchased in 2023 for $4.8 million. And it just sold for $2.8 million, a loss of over $2 million for the person who bought that condo in 2023. Which brought up a whole other bunch of stories in that people are thinking that the bottom of the condo market might actually be here because it's been falling since 2023. And for those of you in Toronto and Vancouver, that means a lot. Like Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, most other places have stabilized already, but Vancouver and Toronto have really, really suffered through to this condo thing. However, this may be the end of it and things might turn around. That's what I read. Who knows?
Hopefully it was a friend of his.
Wouldn't it be so nice if it was Donald's friend? But what people were saying is probably somebody doing some drug laundering money who paid cash for it. And so it was good for them to lose. That was all just a story. Like that last part about the drug laundering, totally fabricated for entertainment purposes only. There was no truth in it. I just made it up. Just so you know. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so now I think it's time to go to George's kitchen because George always loves to give us a gastronomical gift of the week, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what you're going to say because I think I'm going to make it for dinner. I don't even know what it is. Shoot it at us.
Okay, pork chops with a mustard marmalade sauce. Easy to make. You do it all in one pan. And pan-fried potatoes and a nice salad. It goes back to the Middle Ages, the recipes of using fruit with meat, because they used the fruit to preserve the meats. So it's a fabulous combination. You got that nice tart taste, the pork taste, and then a bit sweet of the marmalade, and it's just wonderful. It's a favorite in our family.
My mouth is watering. It sounds amazing. So the recipe is actually on Substack, right? So
yes, it is.
You go to
George's Kitchen. Yeah.
So subscribe to George's Kitchen on Substack, which brings up a very important part. Subscribe, please, to the Substack that George Froelich has so incredibly created. It's all under Froelich Media, so you can subscribe to that, to Canadian Pulse, to American Pulse, to George's Kitchen. The other two are, you've got your lifestyle.
Oh, an inspired life.
An inspired life, which is what you're living.
Well, it's to live a peaceful, contented life so that you're happy, that you give of yourself to others, and it's not just about you.
You know who should hear this information? Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Maybe he'll even become a paid subscriber tomorrow.
By the way, if you are a paid subscriber, you do get a lot of bonus material from George Froelich and Froelich Media. So I highly recommend that too. That's it for us today. And we hope that you've enjoyed this time with us. We are getting ready to do our lives, but George, don't you think we should wait until everybody's back from holidays and start in September?
For the live chats, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's do that. And I think we'll get a great feedback from that, and people will love it. Just judging by the comments and the discussion that goes on when I publish, especially Canadian Pulse. I mean, people, hundreds and hundreds of comments. And most of them, with very few exceptions, we don't get sort of outrageous, stupid remarks like you get on Facebook where they hate Carney with a passion. And, I mean, I've written stuff on Substack notes and posted it on Facebook. and even give you an example. And I'm going to write about this because it needs to be told that the wildfires in British Columbia made awaken the Canadian public. In other, the wildfires became higher up on what they were concerned about, right? And as a result, the Liberals lost some ground, and the NDP and the Green Party lost some gains. And you know that there were people, and to be fair, it wasn't just Conservatives, it was also Liberals who said this was a fake news, and I got paid to write this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And that is how outrageous people are on social media, especially on Facebook. And you get very little of that on Substack. The discussions are very measured. People know what they're talking about. But it never, Tamara, I'm always amazed when this happens. I say to my wife, Linda, I can't believe it. We're going to the moon. We're doing all these wonderful things. And the attitudes that people have and the beliefs that they have. I mean, where are they coming from? I just can't relate to that, you know?
I know.
And they're saying it's fake.
You know what? I think that because of the alternate reality that has been built by people who purposefully did it to mislead people, it's very difficult for people to understand who is telling the truth. And you do. And that's something I can guarantee.
Well, you know, as a journalist, my job is to look at the facts, okay? That doesn't mean to say I'm totally objective. Nobody's totally objective. You bring your certain personality traits and beliefs into the way what you write. I'm not going to deny that. It's absolutely true. But let me put it to you this way. If I believe in something and a fact comes up that disputes that and says it's wrong, I am not going to sit there and say, I'm right and the facts are wrong. But that's exactly what you see on a lot of people on social media. It is just, Tamara, it's scary, and it makes you understand why some of these people fall for these politicians who make these outrageous statements. Because if they believe that the wildfires are manufactured and it's liberal propaganda, and I'm being paid to spread that propaganda, then any politician who gets up and makes outrageous statements that are anti-establishment, people are going to vote for that person. And it gives you a sense of their perspective.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of work to do in making sure that people know that what you are talking about here on this podcast and what I'm talking about too, we have researched and we've run it through tests to make sure that it's not just fabricated. This is important because we understand how important it is for people to actually get the information they require to make informed decisions. And until next time, we hope you have an incredible week. Follow us at American Pulse, at George Froelich, at Tamara Stanners, and at Canadian Pulse. And have a fabulous week.
Talk next week.
Thank you for listening to Canadian Pulse, the podcast. Follow us on Substack at Canadian Pulse, at American Pulse, at Froelich Media, and at Tamara Stanners.